All right. So hopefully we're getting somewhere. Let me tell you, where did I finish off? The Deuteronomy 26 reference over here. Okay. All right. I'm really excited about this, you know. I'm really excited about this teaching and about exploring this topic. Not because I think, it's going to be appraised and everybody's going to love the teaching, but I think it's going to be powerfully impactful if you let it. And I'm excited about the impact that it could have if you would embrace that. Amen? All right, so this is called the Afterburn time. And so if you are here locally, you could raise your hand and Daweed will bring around the microphone. And if you are on live stream, Robert will write down your comments and questions and things. Please keep your comments and questions to the topic today taught. I know that I may have peripherally touched on some things that you might want to know, which means that if Robert types in a link to a teaching or a recommendation of a teaching or tells you that that's something you need to call us during the week, please accept that as the answer. I know some of you are not patient enough to deal with that, and I'm sorry that you are not patient enough to deal with that, but you're going to have to learn to be patient. Also realize that if you ask me a question today, you may hear, be patient, that'll be covered in an upcoming part, and you may have to wait. Or you may hear me refer you to a teaching also. Just because I'm the teacher doesn't mean that I wouldn't refer you to a teaching when I can answer it myself. I'd rather you listen to 3 or 4 hours of something to get all the detail than we give you a 3-minute answer. Because the 3-minute answer will not do justice to something you're confused about. Because you're going to try to think you understand it from 3 minutes when really it'll take 3 hours for you to get it. Or whatever it is. It could be 15 hours. It could be like Grace took 14 hours, okay? So just understand that that still might be my answer. But we'll go ahead and make sure that we're trying to do what we can to help verify that you received what I intended you to receive and that we can help with some of the questions. Who wants to go first? Okay, Amy, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you because your whole teaching really explained my praise report. All the things the Father's brought me through all these past few months was really understanding him having all the authority over my life and that he orders my footsteps and that he's trustworthy. I remember one day driving to work and I was kind of stressed out about something and I heard you say, do you want to operate in trust and belief or fear and doubt? And I said, I want to be in trust and belief. I don't want to be in fear and doubt, and that really, because you teach that so often, just was really helpful. So I just wanted to say thank you because making all these changes, a lot of people hear the praise report, but they don't realize it's grueling to change your character, and you can't do it. It's grueling.
Amen.
And but it's really good. It brings a lot of joy, and you need your mishpachah and your leadership. And so I just wanted to say thank you.
Amen.
Appreciate it.
I mean, look, I want to say something based on, because Amy triggered something that I think is really important, okay? Because Amy moved here, as some of you have, and some of you may be thinking of moving here, and I want you to understand something really clearly. If Abba is moving you here, you probably really don't know why you're here, even though you think you do until you've been here. Because we have people that have moved here and had their own expectation of what that should look like and have left because they didn't get what they wanted out of being here. Instead of trusting that he sent you here for his reason, not yours. So people come and then they leave because they don't like something or they thought I'd be their best friend and I wasn't, or they had their own agenda of what they thought they were coming here for. But if Abba sent you here, just like Abram was sent, right? He says, Abram, I want you to get up and go. He didn't even tell him why, where, what, not just, I want you to get up and go, okay? If you were sent here, do you trust him that there was a reason? And that, ready for this? It may not be something that you will even understand till you've been here a while. Or it may be something you thought, because some of you came here for reasons, and you'll see that that's exactly why you're here, but you may not know. Can you be okay not knowing, but accepting that there's a reason? Because if you were sent here, if you were drawn here by him, and you emotionally didn't get something, blah, 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 or didn't like a particular teaching, whatever it is, and so that's your choice then to leave, then you did not understand that you were drawn here. See, I've had a conversation with people saying, well, the Father sent me to this place or the Father sent me to that place. And I said, well, let's look at the fruit and see if that's true. But some of you, you're looking for not the fruit of it, but you're looking at, did it meet what you wanted it to meet? Your own agenda. And so just realize that, Amy came here and she's here saying, okay. And some of you have come here not finding work right away thinking, well, I guess I came to the wrong place. I really wasn't supposed to come here. Well, no, maybe you need to be more patient. Or maybe you got to learn about the way you select jobs. Maybe you got to look at the way you're willing to do certain things that maybe you should be willing to do things you weren't willing to do. Whatever it is, he's trying to get you to learn. If you feel like, and you really have confidence that he has drawn you to something, then be ready to see whatever that looks like. Because we've got this happening all the time. We've had so many people in the last, 7 years just here at Beth Shalom locally since we restarted this congregation back in 2012 who have come and gone because it wasn't what they wanted it to be. So either A, Yahweh didn't draw them, or if Yahweh did draw them, they weren't being patient to see what that's supposed to look like. Because, like Amy said, if it's going to deal with your character, it's not going to be fun. It's going to be grueling. It's going to be a lot of effort and work and pain, and it's not easy to change you. Although you expect everybody to change for you, and don't realize that that's just as hard for them to do as it is for you to do. Changing and working on yourself, that is hard stuff. And by the way, we might have in time for Sukkot the feelings bags that you could all have. But bear in mind, don't be offended. You don't have to buy them. I will hand one to you. As a way of knowing you're letting your feelings hang out too much all over the ground for people to step on. Here's your feelings bag. Please clean up your mess and carry it around with you. Okay? That's a joke. We're not going to have feelings bags. Somebody said, oh. Yeah, you say that until I hand you one, and you know that that's what that means. So, but this does understand, do you trust him? If he sends you somewhere, if he doesn't send you somewhere, if he has you in a job, if he has you changing jobs, if he has you single, if he has you married, whatever it is, do you trust what? But also, do you understand how much of it is him and how much of it was you? Some of you are where you are because you made choices and you did what you wanted to do and you didn't listen to him at all. So don't believe just for a second that everything that's going on in your life is because that's what he wanted. Now, he allowed it or he caused it, but at the very minimum, he allowed it, but he allowed it so that you could learn something from it, even if it's not what he preferred. He allowed them to all be scattered to the four winds. He allowed the Assyrians to come and take the northern kingdom, and he allowed the Babylonians to come and take the southern kingdom. That wasn't what he wanted. He wanted them to live in the land as one kingdom, under Yahweh, under covenant, obeying and guarding the commands. But he allowed these things because it served his purposes to wake them up, change things, make teshuvah, give us a record of there's consequences, whatever, okay? So let's not also have the Christianese idea of thinking that everything's happening because that's his plan. No, everything is happening he will use to get you eventually to his plan. It doesn't mean it's his plan. Is that confusing? Everything you're going through, he will use to accomplish his plan. It doesn't mean, though, that it was his plan. He may not have wanted you to be going through what you're going through, but you had moments where you could have made a different decision and you didn't follow his leading and listen to him, so you ended up where you ended up. So he'll use it, but that wasn't necessarily his plan. Does it make sense? Can we embrace that? All right, that's an important distinction to understand. All right, Shira, go ahead.
Wow. This is just awesome. I'm excited, too, about just clarifying so many things. I appreciated your introduction, that you took time to really lay some foundations there. And I just had I have a couple thoughts, but the first one is simple. Where does the wearing of Tzitziot fit into the whole picture of mikveh, covenant? Some people, for instance, won't put people into the mikveh. They won't let them wear tzitziot until they've gone into the mikveh, etc. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on that. The Numbers 15 instruction, by virtue of it being a part of the Torah, is part of covenant because it's a commandment, so it's an obedience issue. But the purpose of the tzitziot is twofold. One is to remind you to keep the commandments. The other is it's a public declaration of who you serve. And so I understand why people would encourage people maybe not to wear their tzitzit until they've been in the mikveh, because in the mikveh, you're also making a declaration of a change of citizenship and commitments. And so the idea of having the tzitzit declare something that you haven't been really ready to declare somewhat makes sense not to do that until you have declared it. So, I've often told the men and the ladies too, that it's after you go through the water that that's when you really need to be wearing the tzitzit, because now you've made a public declaration of your covenanting, of your coming into submission to the citizenship of being Israel, and Israel is covenanted. And so it's not like it says anywhere that tzitzit are a sign of covenant. It doesn't connect up that tzitzit are part of the covenant obligation specifically, except in the fact that he said it, we have to do it. So it becomes covenantal, just like eating clean food as opposed to eating unclean stuff is not. It doesn't say that's a covenantal thing, except it is, because he said, I said it, so you got to do it or not do it. Now there are things that are signs of covenant, like that's when we deal with circumcision, Shabbat, and things that are supposed to be visible signs that people would know this person is covenanted because they're doing something that demonstrates in some sort of a way that they're part of the covenant, as a sign of that covenant. Now, that doesn't mean that tzitzit can't be a part of that too. He just never said it. But it is a sign of being covenanted in that it's a visible obedience. When people see my tzitzit, they know I'm keeping a commandment, therefore it's a sign of covenant. So in that way, all right?
Got it.
Okay.
Got it. Okay, great. I wanted to just share my own going into the mikveh that happened about 4 years ago, maybe 4.5. That was a big turning point, because I found that having made that commitment and going in the water, there was a distinct change in how diligently Yahweh began to work on me as an Israelite. And even though I'd gone through hardship before that and emotional stuff and everything, I began to see patterns of how he'd work with me, and often through the things that you counseled me or you called me on, Rabbi Steve. But sometimes even just in my own conviction, you're doing it, but you're not really guarding it, things like that. Yeah. Attitudes. So those who are planning to come and go into mikveh at Sukkot, I would just encourage you, don't be discouraged if you go through and you have the shofar blown over you and the anointing oil come on your head. Get ready. I don't know. Can anybody else identify with that? Yeah. It's he will begin to work on you, and it's not easy, but it's so worth it.
Amen.
So worth it.
Amen.
I just had another thought too, if you'll bear with me, is that you talked a bit about marriage and how couples so often get married without really knowing what they're getting into, and how in your ministry, if you're going to guide someone through marriage and perform a ceremony, you make sure that they really have really good communication with each other. And I see that you're doing this for us, and I really appreciate that. And the thought came to me that sometimes we in this fellowship, we may see people leave Torah at an alarming rate, but I think what's happening a lot of times is they're getting the clearest picture they are going to get just about anywhere I know of what they're getting into, and they say, not ready for that.
Right.
And that is actually a good thing, because you can confirm this or not, Rabbi, but I've been comforted lately regarding loved ones that I kind of groaned for to come in. And I just felt there was an arresting in my heart and a message that kind of came up to me that if they were to come in and covenant now, they're not ready to stay. They're going to be rocky soil, and they're going to be in real trouble. I have a time for them. And I thank you for impressing that on us.
Right, with the Millennium and Kingdom teaching. Amen. Amen. Look, something that Shira said I want to kind of emphasize just a little bit. You can obey, but not guard. Okay? You can obey and guard, but not have your heart in it. And so he wants us to have all three. He wants us to obey. He wants us to guard and watch over, but he also wants us to have a heart in it. Because you can do the first, you can guard it, but just be all, I really don't want to do this, but you'll guard it. But he wants us to do it with our heart in it too. He wants us to want to do it. That's really the whole point of Deuteronomy 8:2, which we didn't mention today, so we might as well get it in there, that he wants to see if it's in our heart to do it. Okay? It's the heart is what it's all about. I mean, the guys who are, and the ladies too, who are going through the Heart of the Matter challenge, I mean, I've listened to a lot of the effects it's having on these people, and it is, go back. It's 64 parts, but go back and listen to that teaching. Especially, they're doing it one a day. I mean, think about the impact of 64 days in a row listening to the next piece and the next piece. A lot of you guys will binge watch something on Netflix. What about binge listening to a teaching like that every day? Boom, boom. Instead of, when I was doing them originally, it took a couple of years, because I didn't even do them all 64 weeks in a row. I mean, we did it over like 3 or 4 years to finish that teaching. But now to listen to it all over a 2-month period in 64 days, and the impact of that. As a matter of fact, they've been so impacted that I think they're selecting another teaching to do after Sukkot. And they're going to go through a on a daily basis and go through it. And I'm looking forward to maybe at some point making director's cuts to all of them. I only did the first 12, but we'll see if we'll make some more. And that's the thing, is that we have to realize there's layers of depth. And one of the layers of depth we have to understand is that he says, obey my voice and guard, and then later he puts in, and with all your heart and with all your being. That's your layers of depth. Obedience with also protecting and guarding after. I mean, you're not getting this, so I'm not changing this. And doing it in a heartfelt way, with enthusiasm and with all of your heart, and loving what you're doing and loving him and appreciating what he's doing to keep you safe and to bless you and to change you. Amen?
Yes, to kind of go along with what Amy said and what you said, it's not always easy, and when you're building character, it's extremely tough. But everything from the family to spending time with you and your wife, and just everything has far exceeded what we expected when we moved here. It's just been such a huge blessing. And like I said, it's not always easy. There are times when we can't be out with everybody that we'd like to be, or things like that. And but everything that happens is just it's amazing.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you. And, again, it has to do with expectations. I can tell you that some of you, if not all of you, have been to a party. And at that party, you came back thinking it was the best party ever, and other people that were at that party hated it. And there's other times when you went to a party and you hated it and other people thought it was awesome. And a lot of times it's because you went there with a certain expectation, and when that wasn't met, you didn't like the party. And if you went there with an expectation and it was met, you loved it. Or maybe you went there with no expectation and you were just ready for anything and you loved it. But it's almost always when you have an expectation and your expectation isn't met that you're going to not like something. And you're going to leave with a bad taste in your mouth or a bad impression, whatever it is, because you had expectation. All right? And you have to decide who gets to set the expectation. See, one of the things that I do in the marriage counseling, and you could talk to Austin and Bailey, you could talk to any other people that I've counseled, is I made sure that they talk to each other about their expectations. Okay? That was a big part of the counseling. I wanted them to really think about what their expectations were, write it down, and then sit down with each other and say, this is what I expect of you, and this is what you should expect of me. And then when the other person goes, make sure you don't laugh. You expect what? Because there could be those moments, but you're probably going to each have a moment where you look at the other one like, really? But then you get to say, oh, okay, and then you can negotiate some of those things and talk about those things and work through those things, because otherwise, those things are already there, and you say, I do, and you get married, and when everything, you're now dealing with those expectations starting to not get met, and now people are starting to get bitter and angry and frustrated, and you didn't know, and you don't know why, because you didn't know they had expectations you weren't meeting. And so now you're all upset, and they're upset, and you don't know why, and blah, blah, blah. Well, because each one of you had a vision of what a wife and a husband look like. And neither one of you is the way the other one thought. Because you had different upbringings, different experiences, and different ideas and visions of what that looked like. You know? You had a different vision of what it was like, to be waking up in the morning and, you might even have a different expectation. My wife and I had a completely different expectation of the temperature in the room. Oh, that was a problem. We were off by about 15 or 20 degrees at one point. Now, through change of life and stuff, we're about on the same page. But, my wife liked it a whole lot warmer in the room than I did when we first got married. And that was a challenge. Okay? I mean, it could be something even like that. But you have expectations. But we don't always communicate them. Yahweh is completely communicating his expectation and tells us what we should expect. So we don't go into this relationship with any confusion. He says, this is what I'm offering and obligating myself to, and this is what I expect from you. No confusion. The systems out there have confused it because they'll start to say that some of those things have been done away with, nailed to the cross, blah, 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 and are no longer valid. Now you're confused. Because now it's like, okay. That's why people actually ask this, and this actually is an absurd question, but it's not absurd in today's times, but on the surface, it's really an absurd question. I'll ask the question, well, how much of the Old Testament followed through into the New? It's a very reasonable question because of the confusion. It's absurd if you read the book, all of it, of course. Okay? But because of the confusion that man has put forth out there and all of the things that have been done, it's a very reasonable question to try to figure out because dispensationalism has made you feel like that was for them and it doesn't actually come forward. But there's part of your brain that goes, but that doesn't make any sense because I think the 10 Commandments should come forward, well, at least 9 of them. Okay? And all of that kind of stuff. And so there's a logical question about, well, what comes forward? But Yahweh makes it very clear that he expects and what we can expect. And that's why in all relationships, most relationships that have issues and problems and have breakdowns is because there's a disconnect in the communication of expectations. Somebody gets mad and almost always will get mad because their expectations are not being met. Smooth. No, I'm kidding. It's water. Okay, no, but you understand what I'm saying? Okay? Most people in relationships have a problem. I don't care if it's 2 of the young ladies in the back, 2 of the guys in the back who are just friends and hanging out and they're buddies. But you know what? Buddies have problems also because they have expectations not being met. Okay? Whether it's ladies or guys, doesn't matter, BFFs, whatever language you guys like to use for that, you end up having a problem with your friend because you have an expectation not being met. Well, I expected them to call me every day or hang out with me this much or whatever it was. Okay? Look, my best friend's sitting in the room here, and if I expected him to call me, we wouldn't actually have a relationship. Okay? Okay? But you have to understand that I've also learned in life that there are initiators and responders. And so, I've ruined relationships because I had buddies that I started getting frustrated. How come you never call me? How come I always have to call you? Well, because they're not initiators, they're responders. I've watched my wife get frustrated with a lady, and the lady's probably exactly the same frustrated with my wife because neither one's calling either one because they're both waiting for the other one to call. Nothing worse than 2 responders frustrated with each other. I say, well, pick up the phone and call her. No, she needs to call me. And I know she's saying the same thing, the other lady. But it's expectations, right? Each one's expecting the other one to, well, she must not like me anymore because she hasn't called. Well, she's probably thinking the same thing of you because you haven't called. Because that's always my first question when I'm counseling somebody. Well, they haven't called me. So have you called them? Well, no. So maybe they're thinking the same thing of you. Pick up the phone. Okay? But I'm just saying expectations. Isn't it great that Yahweh tells us exactly what he expects and what we can expect? So there's no confusion. Very clear. All other relationships, you're going to have to talk to each other and share your expectations. Otherwise, you don't really know. And what I can promise you is the person will be frustrated because they assume you know. That's where the real frustration comes from. Ladies especially, because they all think that men can read their minds or something. Well, how come you didn't do this? Well, I didn't know you wanted me to do this. Well, how didn't you know? Look, ladies, we are very simple, very straightforward creatures. All you have to do is ask. And generally, we'll do it. But don't think we're going to figure it out on our own and just see it needing to be done or whatever else. That's just men in general, okay? Most men will do whatever you want. Just ask. Generally. I know some of the wives are like, yeah, really. But you get mad at us because we should know something that you haven't asked. But just ask us. Tell us. You know, we're happy to do it. Maybe we won't get it done in your time frame. Especially the white and yellows of us who are either busy having fun or being independent or whatever. But anyway, but do you understand? It's expectations, okay? Expectations. Is it Daweed?
I just wanted to bring out, since it was being discussed about people coming down and having expectations of what happens down here. When I came down here, I had absolutely no clue what was necessarily going to happen. I didn't necessarily even have a clue about what would happen in my discipleship with you. But to a certain extent, I kind of knew that. So I was sort of half braced for what would happen with me. I know that last Sukkot, I would definitely have appreciated one of those feelings bags. I mean, really, I definitely could have used one of those. But at the same time, I had to go through some stuff in my own character, and I already knew that. And I think that part of people's reasons is they see all the issues in everybody else, but it's sometimes hard to see your own issues and realize that you really can't change anybody else, but the only person you can change, have any hope of changing, is yourself.
Amen. Absolutely. How many of you would like if we at Sukkot, even though a lot of you are already married, if I walked you through what I walked the premarital people through so that you can learn to do the things maybe you didn't do, but you can still do them now? Would that be something you'd want to do at Sukkot? Because I've got some slots I want to work with the couples. Okay? I didn't see a whole lot of hands go up. Okay? There's some. Some of you are like afraid to put them up there, okay? But I think that I can give you some of the things and have you do some of the exercises that would help you for sure that I had Austin and Bailey do, and I've had all the other married couples that I've, in the weddings where I had Kirk and Lisa do it. You can ask Kirk and Lisa too, Anybody I've done their wedding, I had them walk through these processes to really help them get to know each other and their expectations and those kind of things, and that should help all the communication issues, a lot, hopefully. And so we can certainly do some of that at Sukkot. Okay, we're going to be doing some things for the couples. And also, by the way, you learn that if you're single, how to be ready for being a couple to some degree. Okay? So, did you have your hand up for the mic? Okay, Billie Jean, go ahead.
First of all, I wanted to tell you, my husband and I had that very conversation the other day. I said, so-and-so hasn't called me in a long time. And he said, well, have you called her? I said, well, no, she should call me. Yeah. I just wanted to, but what I really need to say was, if anyone has any doubt that Yahweh will get you eventually, if you listen to him, where he wants you to be, because it's a long story and I'm not going to go do it, but if anybody wants to know, I'll be glad to tell them. But it's a story that how I got up here to Chattanooga from living into Florida. And I look back on the whole thing and I realized that it was him, and this is where he wanted me, and he was going to get me here, and this is where I need to be.
Amen.
But it had to be Yahweh. This is what I'm trying to say.
Amen.
You'd had to know.
Amen. And actually, and Billie Jean is probably one of the longest people here in the congregation, if not the longest. So if you want to know anything about how it's been for most of the last 7 years, Billie Jean's been here. Yeah, she says she's been here all that time because she knows that's where she needs to be. And there's been a lot of upheavals and other thing else. She had lots of opportunities to decide not to, just to go and leave and not deal with the craziness. But, it eventually all played out and settled out into what it is now. And basically, this has become a really well, close-knit, really well put-together family. I mean, it's really, the the love that you guys have for each other. And I mean, I know how much time you outside of here that you spend with each other. And now I see always posted, people are always they're at this one's house or at that one's house or going out and doing this with these people. I mean, you guys are all wanting to be not just, we're just here on Saturday, but we're building those relationships. Look, I mean, even like going to Five Guys afterwards, and almost all of you go there, even if you're not eating. And last week, we didn't leave until almost 2, and it closed at 11. And we stood in front of it for like 2.5, 3 hours. It was crazy, but it was fun. It was awesome. But that's because we still just wanted to be together. I mean, what crazy group of people would stand in front of a restaurant after it closes for an hour to 2 hours to 3 hours? And we stand out at least an hour every week. This one was an exception, But it's because we love each other. We really are starting to build those relationships, and we just like keeping every moment we can be with each other as much as we can, Okay, back at the live stream, Robert.
All right, comment from Aaron Sullivan. You said that the Israel we have now does not include all the land that Yahweh intended. And Jeremiah 31:38-40 says that all the borders will be put back and not be changed anymore forever. Just thought it was neat that it was mentioned in the same chapter.
Amen. Excellent. I didn't go that far forward in the chapter because I was trying to hit specific points. Very great. I love that. Thank you, Aaron.
From Eved-Yahu.
By the way, just to make sure everybody caught that, so what Aaron was reading demonstrates that the Israel we have today is not the fulfillment of Jeremiah because they have not restored the borders. Okay, go ahead.
From Eved-Yahu. If you aren't circumcised and can't, for he is not independent yet to make his own decision. So are you legitimate or are you still not covenanted until you get circumcised?
Look, Abba is doing Deuteronomy 8:2 with all of you. You have your heart to intend to do the best you can with what's available that you can do, and you do with all your heart, and that's what matters. Don't get too hung up on, that's Christianese, status again. Are you saved? Are you a believer? Are you covenanted? Don't get locked onto those terms. I'm just explaining what it is so you understand what you can do. It still always comes back to you do as much as you can, as best you can, at all times. And so if you're not old enough to make your own choices and you're under, your parents' covering, et cetera, whatever it is, then you have to wait. You have to wait. But Abba knows that. Listen, he understands where you're at. That doesn't mean he understands you're at a job and if you don't work on Saturday, you're going to get fired. Well, he also understands you got to trust him to get you another job. But he also understands if you're a child, I mean, you're 17, 18, 19, and you can't make these choices yourself and you're living under your parents' covering, blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, he understands that. So as soon as you can make your own choice, then he's going to watch and see what you do. Okay? He's going to watch and see what you do once you're able to make your own choices. So let's just always keep that in mind. Hopefully that answered it.
And this next one, I kind of know, I'm pretty sure I know what your answer is, but I'm limited to 200 characters to respond. So, Joni Swartz, are women part of this Melchizedek priesthood, and does this mean that and does this begin in the millennial reign? Also, is the Levitical priesthood obsolete? Okay.
And I could do 200 characters in about 15 seconds so when I get on a roll. Not typing-wise, just out of my mouth. Okay, let's leave the Melchizedek Levitical stuff to the teaching that I'm going to do at some point on that, but I will say this much. All right, the Melchizedekian priesthood and the Levitical priesthoods were independent at certain points, were coinciding at certain points. In Moses' day, you see them both going at the same time, Aaron being Levitical and Moses being Melchizedekian. Not that they're not both Levites, but Melchizedekian didn't matter bloodline. Okay, you didn't. So you could actually have two family members, and they were brothers, but one be a Melchizedekian priest, one be a Levitical priest. At the same time, when you ask about the ladies, look, the Melchizedekian priests are the teacher priests. It has to do with anointing and appointing and calling, and I don't know that I would say it's limited to just men. And so let's just leave that to see how it plays out as we let Abba teach us this whole thing as it goes through. As far as when does it come into effect, all of us right now are training to become a part of the covenant, which is a kingdom of priests. Those would be Melchizedekian priests, because all of us will have the responsibility as priests of the Most High in teaching and sharing his commandments with others. And that's going to be, but that's a future event. That's not now. You're not to go knock on doors like the Jehovah's, whoever, and instead of trying to get them to Jesus, get them to Torah. No, you will be obligating at some point, during the millennium most likely, you'll be given an opportunity to teach people his ways. And that would be a Melchizedekian role, all right? So hopefully that makes some sense. I will do a teaching on the Melchizedekian priesthood and Levitical priesthood at some point. I'm trying to find enough time to put it together. That one's going to need a lot more time than just me listing out some verses and doing the research I do and then sharing with you like I am with the covenant, because I'm addressing not only what Scripture says about it, which is very limited, but I'm addressing some teachings that are out there that are somewhat abundant, that are wrong in my opinion, and I need to be able to go through those teachings and hit their points and clarify why I think some of what they're saying is wrong. All right? So that's why we haven't done that teaching yet, because that's going to take time I've not had. But now that we're going to have the building set up and we're getting some other things with people being hired and other things that we're doing, I should hopefully have more time to put together that teaching. So the only reason we don't have that is I don't have the time to structure that teaching to make sure it's hitting all the right points. All right? Anybody else? No, we're good? All right, let's get the children. Shabbat Shalom! Shavua Tov! All right, we love you guys. Have a great week. Blessings to you all.